Well, here's the deal. While I felt under the influence of that feeling, those thoughts, the only thing I believe that released me from that feeling was the thought of free will. God gave us free will.
Will you come to the bar I have shaded for you? Your bed shall be of roses bespangled with the dew. Will you come to the bar? Will you come to the bar?
Between the years of 1836 and 1846, Texas was an independent republic. To become that republic, General Sam Houston led a battle against the famous Mexican general Santa Anna. 19 minutes later, they had won. As they marched to war, General Houston asked that "Will You Come to the Bower" be played. It's the closest the Republic of Texas ever came to having a national anthem. One of the heroic names that shows up over and over again in the history is the name Zavala. The first vice president of the Republic was named Zavala. Texas still has a Zavala County. In 1908, Adina de Zavala made it her life's passion to save the Alamo. Her efforts are why that building still stands. The Republic had a navy, and its most powerful ship was the steamship schooner Zavala. Unfortunately, Texas was a poor republic, poor in materials, poor in wealth, and certainly poor in maritime mechanics. So the ship soon met its end. Tonight, though, we have with us Val Zavala. He's going to talk to us about free will, he's going to talk to us about Bigfootery, and he's going to talk about unusual methods of knowledge transmission. Please stay and listen. Val is a truly fascinating guest.
Trailer Trash Terrors.
Greetings, temporal humans. This is Boudreaux, the cybernetic ghost from the future. Welcome to Season 2, Episode 11 of the Trailer Trash Terrors podcast. I find that I am increasingly fascinated with the almost limitless flexibility of human minds. While human brains and minds will never sort and parse the massive quantities of numeric data that my machine-based brethren handle so easily, they often do, without even trying, something far more miraculous. They parse moral understanding, gestaltic truth, and precious wisdom out of a lifetime of unconnected, often random, and even more often painful experiences. Vic Hermanson's guest tonight, Val Zavala, military veteran, retired law enforcement officer, and Bigfoot data pioneer, is a prime example of a temporal human that has fully manifested that capability. How Vic Hermanson managed to engage such an outstanding guest is a mystery, even in my vast, deeply interconnected mind. Take it away, Vic Hermanson.
Hello, this is Vic Hermanson. I guess there's nothing better than being introduced by a hyper-intelligent, disencircuited consciousness from the future. I really like the Come to the Bower song. When I first played it for our guest tonight, Val Zavala, he really liked it also. I'm going to let it play during my introduction. I first became aware of Val on an internet group called Bigfoot Photo Archives. It's a very good group. He has a co-host who has been collecting Bigfoot photos for years and years. He doesn't know the origin of many of these, but they are the most fascinating set of photos on the entire internet. I posted a photo of what appears to me to be a 7 foot 8 inch feral human, Neanderthal, I don't know what it is, and that's the way with many of these photos. Val runs the group as a serious, analytical endeavor, and that's what attracted me to the group in the first place. He doesn't want there to be a lot of snark, he doesn't want there to be any trolling at all, and this angers some people. But what you end up with is a group of people who are willing to look at the Bigfoot topic, and particularly Bigfoot photographs, in a serious and thoughtful manner. That's a good thing. I had the privilege of interviewing Val on September 5th, 2022, for almost 100 minutes. That's a long interview. I came away feeling that I had been privileged to be in the presence of a very powerful mind, one that approaches the Bigfoot topic unlike anybody else I've ever talked to. Val is deeply interested in data, and he's deeply interested, as all former law enforcement officers should be, with discerning the truth of this matter. I've said enough. Let's enjoy what Val has to say. I'll be honest with you, in listening to your other interviews, the part of you that seems to be most passionate is the work you did to find this young man who had been murdered.
Yeah, that's to me, that's the strangest part. That's when I talk about, when people ask why and how did you get involved in this idea of Bigfootery wasn't something that I grew up and wished for as a youngster. You know, like some wished to be a doctor, some wished to be a police officer, a carpenter. I kind of walked into this out of sheer tragic happenstance. When I got a phone call, when I started getting these dreams, and I don't know if I told you this or not, but there was an apparition in my bedroom that I thought was a burglar, but it was an Indian man, an ancient Indian man dressed up in period dress in my bedroom. My first reaction was to get up and go get my gun out of the closet because I thought it was the burglar.
As anybody's reaction would be.
And the problem was I couldn't get up, and it was me and it looking at each other. I'm awake out of a sound sleep looking at this thing. So this is a path. This is what set this whole thing in motion, I believe, because there was a time when I woke up out of a sound sleep. I mean, think about it. Working midnights for 15 and a half years. Sleep is premium. And when you go to sleep, you appreciate it. But when I hear someone standing over me, calling my name, my eyes are wide open and I'm wide awake. And this is what happened to me. This is how this all occurred to me. And this is the best way that I can explain it.
Can I explore down into that a bit?
You could.
Okay.
Absolutely.
When you say you couldn't move, was that literally a feeling of physical constraint, as if your body just wasn't going to obey?
I've read and I've heard explained as though your ethereal body, you're out of body of sorts. Your body is still laying there, but you're wide awake. You're lucid in your thought, your movement, but yet the body isn't reacting to that. Although I didn't see that man's mouth move, I didn't hear him talking. And in fact, I didn't even hear myself talking, but I knew I was talking to it. And the message that I got through the eyes, and you might see this occasionally with Bigfoot reports. I know I do, because I read hundreds of thousands of them. I do. This is what I do. And the thought, the speak, the language was eye to eye, mind to mind. And the message to me was just relax. It was surprised that I was able to see it.
Really?
And the message that I got was it was just passing through. Just relax. I'm not here to harm you. I'm not here to hurt you. I'm just passing through.
But you're describing. I'm sorry.
Mm-hmm. Go ahead.
I said you're describing something with full human awareness.
Yes.
Okay.
So I relaxed, and before I know it, I'm sound asleep again. When morning came and it's light outside, the first thing that I did when I woke up was look over at that doorway to make sure it was gone. I mean, it wasn't scary and harmful to me. It wasn't a monster. It was in all practical purposes, it was a live being, a real person. The problem was, it was on a different dimension, I guess. I'm a police officer. I was a police officer.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a pretty smart person. I'm
definitely
thoughtful. I'm a thinker. I'm aware of things. I have been, even on the job, I was aware of things around me to the point where I can tell you that I've been into many homes at many times of the night, the day, where people claim somebody broke into their home, and we go up there, and what I feel, now there isn't anything up there, and I'm not the only one, there's 2 or 3 of officers go up, but what I sense when I get up there is the same feeling that I felt in the woods on 2014, July 19th, when I had my encounter. And that's the overwhelming presence of being watched. And I illustrate that, and I explain that the same manner in which you or anybody else that's attuned with their senses and their feelings. You walk into a crowded auditorium or a crowded bar, a restaurant. I've done this many, many times. And you walk in, you feel the presence of a whole crowd of people around you. Before I was a police officer, with my wife, I started going to EST.
I remember you talking about that.
Yes. They don't do this anymore. In fact, it's outlawed.
I've been to an EST session.
Oh, you have?
Yes, I have.
That's interesting. So you know what I'm talking about.
I know what you're talking about, and this is your interview, not mine, but I found it horrifying. I mean, it felt, I don't know, words like demonic and this sort of thing to me. And it kind of gets into you. And at some point, there was a place where I just said, I can't be here anymore. I got to go. And so I get up and I start walking out. And within seconds, I've got goons all around me telling me, you leave now, you won't ever be a man. You won't ever do anything in your entire life. You are giving up on yourself.
Victor.
Yes, sir.
You're speaking to the choir here. Seriously. It was very expensive.
Uh-huh.
It was for movers and shakers, people that were believed to be selected, if I can use that word.
Right, the future elite.
Yeah, exactly. And I got the same sense of creepiness that you explained. I'm serious, and I tell you this: I went there with my wife, then girlfriend, later on my wife, and a friend of her mother's. She was older than us, and I've never felt so angry in my life. And I was, there was a lot of people. There were hundreds of people there. This was held in Southfield, Michigan, in a big civic auditorium.
So this was a big meeting.
Yeah, it was. It was huge. And when I explained to you, I don't know what programs you experienced, but I'll tell you one that I do, and it still resonates with me to this day. It was going into this auditorium, and this was part of the training. They controlled the temperature. the room temperature. They told you when to go to the bathroom, when you couldn't go to the bathroom, when they were going to break for lunch. Nobody left that building. When you walked in there, you didn't leave until it was done. They had numerous facilitators and trainers. And one in particular, in this one training episode, where they were trying to make you jealous. I mean, they were going through all your emotions. And there was one idiot that was in that group that wanted to be pals with my girlfriend.
Oh, I'm sure you were really thrilled about that.
No, I wasn't, and that's it was part of the anger I felt because nobody going to come lay their pillow next to my girlfriend, my wife, and start rubbing backs and stuff. We're not doing that stuff. I'm not here for that. Listen, I gave up my money for my tuition money for college for that, just to be with my wife, to participate with my wife with this. And I'm glad I did. Because,
yeah, I was going to say, aren't you glad you did?
Yeah, I was, because I'd really be jealous then. But so as it turns out, this episode, this particular training was, and we were told this going in there. This is what's going to happen. You're going to walk into the auditorium, and this is just a group. I don't know, there's 50 people in my group. And they take the 50 people, they sit us down in that auditorium. We walk in there, and you see all the rest of the people. There might be 100, 200 people in there. And they're told before we get in there, don't say a word. Don't talk. Don't comment. Don't blurt anything out. Keep your mouth shut. And we were marched in there. We were told where to sit. We sat. The facilitator comes over to me in particular, because that's what I remember. And he starts asking me questions, and he's on the stage. And I guess I started to be a little defiant. He comes off the stage, walks up the aisle with a microphone, and we're going back and forth. We're verbally jousting. And that's not good in there. And you know what kind of training that was and how structured it was.
Well, it would soon be 500 against 1.
Yeah. Well, here's what we did. So he says, come on up to the stage. And there I am, front and center. The lights dim. I'm on the stage. They got a light up above me, like I'm under the spotlight. And he's asking me, taunting me, how do you feel? How do you really feel? And he's standing nose to nose with me. He has another facilitator come out. He stands on my right side, and another trainer comes out and stands on my left side. They're breathing in my ear. Another one comes out, and he's standing right behind my head, staring at your head. How do you feel? Do you feel that? And I don't know about you. I've seen this before in the military since. I've had it in police training. I've had it in military training. I've seen grown men break down and cry over that particular exercise right there. That's the feeling. You understand the strong feeling when you sense somebody around you within your space. That's what you feel. That's the feeling I felt often when I went into some of these homes.
What do you think you were feeling? Do you think it was an entity in that home? Do you think it was a residual feeling?
What I felt in that home was there were residual imprints in that home. You understand that, especially a man's home, a person's home. It could be a woman. It's their home. It's their domain for life, and they might have died in that house, but their heart and soul is in that house. It's imprinted in that wood. It's imprinted in that floor, the ceiling. It's that land, that soil that they stood on. It's there. It's always there. It reverberates. It's like an everlasting presence there. And so whatever activity they did in real life, whether it's crying, weeping, grieving, expressions of joy, whatever, sometimes, a lot of times, what I've seen, what I've experienced, it stays there. It's there. And that's why it's so important when I bought a house, when I was flipping houses, when I'd look for a house, I'd do a background investigation on the house. I mean, I was the best person for that. That's what I would do. I don't want any house that's had bad karma in it. I don't want any of that. I don't want any murders, no suicides, any of that stuff. On that
Horrible abuse, heinous actions, things like that.
No. You want a house that's free and clear. You want the first order of business should be get the house blessed and change the locks. That's the first order of business when you buy a used home. And that, my friend, I'm telling you from experience, that's what you do. If you have any, if you have any reservations, you don't do it.
Yeah, that's a place you would trust your feelings. If you feel anything negative, go to the next house.
Yeah, I mean, no matter what the deal is, it could be a great deal, but you don't do it. You know, you listen to your instincts and follow your gut, as they say, and move on. So what happens is he calls all of those people in my group, 50 people in my group, and he brings out enough trainers while the lights are dimmed, and he has them do the same thing. Stand in front, back, sides of all these people. Now the lights are on the stage. We're looking out towards the audience. And Victor, you can feel the lights are dimmed in the audience. You can't see the audience, but by golly, you can feel their presence right
You
there.
sure can.
You can hear them breathing. You can hear them cough every now and then. That is exactly what I feel, or I felt in some of these homes. That's exactly what I felt in the woods, 2014, July 19. You can't see, but you can feel. An example, you go into a busy bar, a restaurant, you don't know anybody, you're a stranger, you sit down, Well, the first thing that happens when you walk into a busy establishment, whether it's an auditorium, bar, restaurant, all eyes go to the door. It's a natural magnet. All eyes go there. You sit down, make yourself comfortable, have a seat, try this sometime. Pick out somebody in that crowd. Pick out somebody in that crowd with their back to you and stare at them and see what happens.
See how long it takes them to realize that somebody is staring at them.
That's right. They'll get the feeling. And they might get the pricklies. You might see them make a gesture with their hand, rub their neck. You might see them adjust themselves. And you might be surprised. You might see them turn around and look you dead straight in the eye. Then you know that's one of them. That's one of those people like you that are attuned and instinctive.
I would think that this kind of skill is critical to being a successful policeman.
Well, it has, and that's something that I talk about, or I have talked about in the past. It's something that we're all born with, but we don't always use. We're not always aware of it. So it is a skill, but the biggest hurdle to get over in doing this is learning to trust yourself. Remember I talked about instinct?
Yes.
It's a major task getting to the point where you trust your instinct. And you can what I've done over the years is test it. Take a scenario, think about it, and then decide what you want to do. And in police work, it's unique because a lot of times you're in situations where you have to make a decision on a moment's notice. And there's not very many jobs like that outside of doctors and stuff like that that you're required to do that. But you know, in that kind of work, in that culture, the wrong mistake can be your last mistake on a lot of different levels.
Well, career-wise at the minimum, life-wise at the most.
Exactly. I'm thinking vicarious liability or any kind of liability. I'm talking about safety, life and death, a lot of different things like that. But the main thing is, and I'm getting off topic here, but the main thing is learning to trust your instinct. One of the first things that I was taught a long time ago when I went into the state police is learning to process what you see. If you understand that your eyes are cameras or like cameras, you see a lot more than your brain processes. And the reason why that is so is because we're lazy. We're lazy. We want people to show it. We want people to make us a hamburger if we're hungry. We go buy a hamburger. We don't want to take the time to make it. We want someone to bring it to us to make it. But when you're driving around and you're just looking around, your head's moving side to side, your eyes should be taking snapshots of everything that you see. You might get a half block down the road or a block down the road, even a half mile down the road and think to yourself, that van sitting there wasn't there at, and I'm thinking, midnights, that van wasn't there during the day when I passed through there. Now at 3 o'clock in the morning, I see that van. It's a little out of place. I got to go back and check it. Those are the kind of things.
So any anomaly, anything that doesn't seem to fit neatly, I don't want to divert from this, but my former career was trauma center nurse.
Okay.
Worked in Ben Taub in Houston, and trauma center nurses and policemen developed relatively close bonds because they're coming in, bringing people. They're occasionally coming in as patients themselves, and the same way in critical care and ER nursing. If something doesn't feel right with a patient and you ignore that, it will almost always come back to bite you. Just that feeling of, yes, I know the vitals look okay right now, but there's something in the back of my head, there's something in my heart that just says, no, this isn't correct. You better pay attention to that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. A trained eye sees something that doesn't fit or belong more than a casual eye. And a lot of what I do and what I've done before I got involved in Bigfootery was watching anomalies and sequential patterns. That's what I do. And that's what makes what I do unique, because when people ask about Bigfoots and stuff like that, a lot of the stuff is about behavior. And what I do when I look through hundreds and thousands of reports, and when I say hundreds of thousands, Victor, I mean hundreds of thousands.
I believe you.
And, that's what I do. I pick out the anomalies.
And over time, you've probably become very fast at that, of being able to move through the report quickly and say, this is what matters, this doesn't.
I developed a long time ago, I developed words or terms like red flags, and a whole set of them, actually. I call them data points. And usually I'm looking at about 190 data points. Maybe all the reports don't contain those, but a lot of the reports contain something that fills, that red flag. I'll look through a report, for instance. You're talking about the databases and the data sets.
Yes, sir.
When I go into this, I know for a fact that there's 6 primary data sets that I'm looking for in a report, and all reports are going to have them. And one of them is going to be camping, because that's where these things happen, these activities people are involved with. Camping, farming, hiking, motorists, hunting, and residences. Those are the 6 main areas, 6 main groups as I have it. And from each of those 6 groups, you might have a half dozen subgroups underneath that. For instance, for hiking, you might have boating, you might have fishing. For hunting, you might even have horseback riding, because that's what people do. They use horses to hunt. It's not always on the ground. It's not always walking. People hunt from cars. People hunt from horses. They walk. And so there's many, many different subsets to each one of those primary groups that I mentioned, many of them. And so when you start to look at these things, such as, for instance, I'm looking at abandoned houses. There's abandoned houses, there's abandoned farms, there's abandoned cabins. This is an important, to me, it's an important red flag, because that's where some of these reported encounters happen. Another one would be house pounding. A lot of people, house pounding.
I've heard about that.
People don't talk about that, but that's an anomaly, and it happens. House pounding could be pounding on a door, can be pounding on the walls, and right away people jump to ghosts when they hear that. These things do that. They try the doors. They attempt forced entry. They try doorknobs, just like thieves and robbers. Sometimes they walk in the house. When nobody's around, they'll take the door off. If they want to get in there, and if they're hungry, they'll take the door off. They've been known to sleep in beds, in people's beds.
Oh boy.
Some of them weigh a lot. There's been reports of them punching holes in the floors, just by the sheer weight.
Just an older house with some rotting wood.
Yeah, an older house.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what people can't reconcile with, that I talk to, is they come to me and they say, Val, how can these things climb roofs? They do. They not only climb roofs, they'll get on the balconies and peep in the window if they want to do that. Well, how they do that? They weigh 800 pounds. Well, I'm not an engineer, but I was involved in roofing a little bit, construction, and today's modern houses and stuff are built to hold hundreds and hundreds of pounds of snow, and that's pretty heavy in the wintertime, especially in the houses in the north, Pennsylvania and in Michigan. They can hold a lot. They can withstand a lot. That's the way they're constructed. And with most houses around the country now, under tight building codes, that's what we have. I mean, we got roofs that are constructed to hold hundreds of pounds. So that's no big feat for anybody's imagination that knows that that's what they do. And they do that.
So what you're talking about is a kind of pattern of behavior where they're probing into the human world.
Mm-hmm.
In one of your interviews, you were talking about these creatures being very interested in children.
I don't like it. It's creepy. It's that's one of the things that is dear and near to my heart.
Mm-hmm.
I don't like it. When I sit and watch videos of people in the zoos and stuff, they think it's funny. You go up to these zoos with the very, very thick plastic glass windows, and stay there and get the attention of a gorilla or maybe a lion or a tiger.
Correct.
And allow the baby to sit there so the baby can get surprised when the animal comes close to the window. It scares them. And that's funny. To me, it's not funny. I don't find any humor in that.
I don't find it funny at all.
I don't find any humor in that.
Partially because of the practical reason of you can't be assured that a piece of plexiglass is always going to work against a 600-pound tiger. But second off, it's just abusive to the animal.
Really? I mean, are we tempting the animals now? Is that what the nature of humor is? Is that where it's gone? I don't like it. I've read enough of these reports to know to argue a good point against feeding them and gifting them. I've never done that. I discourage people from doing it. I know people that do, but I don't agree with that. I'm not on board with that, and I try to dissuade people from going into that behavior, that practice, because I've seen enough of these reports of them spreading their violence on people, on human beings.
Well,
and it's pretty bad.
I mean, to me, it's bizarre for anyone who's ever actually seen something in this realm. They've seen the same thing I saw, of wanting to mess with it at all. Because believe me, something that large, that muscular, that fast, it could rip you in multiple pieces in just a few seconds. Nothing you could possibly do about it.
No. And they have in the past.
From the Atlanta Constitution, Tuesday, August 17th, 1965. It's 7 feet tall and growls, and it grabbed her by the hair. Monroe, Michigan. What weighs more than 400 pounds, smells moldy, growls like a mad dog, and dislikes automobiles? Answer: the Monroe County Monster. That was the latest Monday on the thing, which has been sighted here and there in Monroe County during the past 2 months by at least 16 persons, including Christine Van Acker, a 17-year-old blonde. Miss Van Acker, who goes to a beautician school here, has a black eye which she said was inflicted by the monster. Friday night, state police were checking her story and patrolling the area at night northeast of this southern Michigan city. Miss Van Acker gave this story of the encounter. I was driving Mother, Mrs. Rose Owens, home. Suddenly there was this bump and a hairy arm grabbed me by the hair. It wasn't human or anything. I tried to go faster, but the car stalled. The girl fainted. Mrs. Owens, who jumped out of the car and ran for help, described the ordeal like this. The first I knew, there was this bang and an arm came through the window. Christine yelled, "Mommy, help me! Oh my God, help!" I told her to get going, get the car going, but it stalled. The monster had his paw entwined in her hair and kept banging her head on the side of the car. I decided the best thing to do was to go for help. When I got back with other people, Christine was semi-conscious and the monster was gone. The monster was at least 7 feet tall, weighed about 600 pounds, and it had a long reach. It was all covered with black bristly hair, and toward the end of the hair it was silver. You couldn't see its face. There was so much hair. And it growled. It had a real growl, and definitely was not a bear. Christine said she was sure it was not a bear, because bears have fur, and this thing had prickly hair like thorns. She also said she was sure it was not a prankster, because nobody human would do anything like that.
You were talking about the, gosh, I forgot the name of the county, 1965 Monroe County?
Yes, Monroe Monster. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the Monroe County Monster. And one of the resources that I use in my writing and in my research concerning these topics is newspapers.com, which gives you access to thousands of newspapers going back to like 1700 or so. So it was real easy to pull up 1965 Monroe County Monster.
Mhm.
And so I looked through maybe a dozen articles. Every single one was essentially ridiculing the 17-year-old girl. There was not even one article that said, she incurred these head injuries or anything like that. I don't quite understand the reason why there wouldn't be at least some small portion of journalists who would at least report it seriously.
I was familiar with that because I lived in that area in 1965. I'm acutely aware of the socio-political events of that time. Uniquely, I look back into my memories, and only I do it with the unjaundiced eyes of a police officer. How would I look at this? I've read the newspaper accounts, and I remember some of them. I remember them, but then again, I also use that massive database that you're talking about as a private investigator. It's proved helpful in the stuff that I was doing. Back to the 1965 Monroe Monster. I don't know if you're aware, but the 17-year-old girl, pretty girl, 16 years old, turning 17. She was with her mother, and she right now is in her 70s or 80s at least. She's a great grandma. Her son is on my group site.
Is he?
Yeah, and I've always defended his mother. Always have, because knowing what I know about that, which and I don't know that much, and I don't know what kind of life that she had, but as a father, seeing what my daughters went through, what it was like. I was a teenager. I was 16 years old at one time, but I wasn't a girl.
Correct.
But I know the emotional roller coaster, the kids are at in that age, and how prom dances and all that kind of stuff were pretty special.
Correct. Acceptance and peer pressure.
Exactly. And so in 1965, that's what they did in Monroe County. They probably did it all over the country, but in 1965, if you needed to learn how to drive, your parents took you out on those back road country roads, those county roads. That's how you learn how to drive. So that part I get. That's what the mother was doing. In 1965, that summer, that wasn't a wealthy family. That was a 100% thoroughbred, blue collar home. They had no air conditioner. I doubt that many cars had air conditioners in 1965. Remember, we were still walking around with transistor radios if we wanted to listen to some rock and roll music.
And we thought they were pretty cool.
And 1965 was a time of great upheaval. It was just 2 years after our president was assassinated down in Dallas, Texas. The Vietnam was heating up. The civil rights was a big, huge matter then. And, I don't know about you, but even in Monroe County, there was still a Southern boy mentality, I seen, from the police officers. I'm talking about county sheriffs and stuff. So all that, and this is what I look at. And then when someone comes up and says, "Hey, a hairy monster, come out of the field," ran up to my car, I screamed. So my first reaction as a new driver, my foot hits the brake, I stall, I stall the car out, I can't get it started, the window's down because it's extremely hot, extremely humid Michigan summers.
Sure.
And while I'm screaming, this thing reaches and grabs my hair and slams me against the doorpost, and now I'm really in a hysterical fit. And me and my mom, it's in the darkness. This thing walks off. Me and my mom get out of the car, not knowing what to do. We call for help. We're on a country back road. Although my grandma lives further down the road, they can't hear us scream, but somebody apparently did. So much so that the lights started turning on. When neighbors start hearing that, they all come out with pitchforks and hose and whatever. They want to help. So the sheriffs, they take their time to get out there, and again, looking at this from a police officer's perspective, when you have a report by anybody, especially two women at night, that they've been assaulted, and you don't know by what, they claim it's a monster, but they've been assaulted and there's injury. To me, in my mind, that's a crime scene. Doesn't matter if it's made up. We're going to find out. But we're going to go out there and secure the scene. We're going to secure that vehicle, take the vehicle in, and get to the bottom of it.
Find what physical evidence you can find.
That's right. And apparently they didn't. The vehicle sat out there. And in fact, I think the neighbors finally got the vehicle back to the house. And through my study, through my investigation back into time on this, the sheriffs, made a claim that, through the newspapers, of course, that, they weren't going to investigate any monster claims. It was a hoax. In their mind, it was a hoax, and that's it.
And that's it. They went no further.
That went no further. And then all these people from Detroit and outstate and out of state that came in here to look, well, it was just a carnival. People went out there in the fields looking, trampling through the field looking for footprints. And of course, while they're doing this, there's a deluge. There's just a monster rainstorm that comes in.
Mm-hmm.
Where have I heard this before? Well, I've got 3 or 4 of those missing 411 books right behind me. Mm-hmm. And that's one of the things that always seem to occur in these cases.
It does happen. It does seem to occur a lot. I hadn't put that together in my mind before, but you're right.
Yeah. So the sheriffs, when forced to go out there and look, well, of course, what do they see? They probably see a million footprints from centipedes, that have been trampling through there. And they don't see anything, which is okay. So this goes back and forth in the newspapers. The state police gets involved. Michigan State Police. One of the state police troopers interviewed by an old-time news journalist from that time period, from the local newspaper, was quoted as saying, "We tried to keep it secret," and the word got out. Mm-hmm. Well, that's pretty profound. It's pretty important. The sheriff comes along and says, when really pressed and harangued by journalists, claim that, no, he doesn't, we've heard, we haven't heard of reports of monsters, but we had a report of a bear in the South County. Well, let me tell you something. Since I've been doing this, I've come to realize that bears and Sasquatch are synonymous. Bears are the new word for Sasquatch. If you don't want to say Sasquatch, if you're pressed and put against the wall and asked to describe what it is, just say bear. You know why? Because bears have been the word that's always been used, because so many people, right or wrong, the first thing that comes to their mind when they see a Sasquatch on all fours or standing up, I thought it was a bear until it growled at me and took off running on 2 feet.
On 2 feet.
On 2 feet. So
9 feet tall.
Yeah. But whatever you do, call it a bear. Blame it on the poor bears. Now, I'm not saying that bears are good, but bear is using the word bear in a lot of these reports is deception, and it's a word that's used quite a bit to describe a Sasquatch. But then again, if the news is censored, there's no way of knowing that. But that's the way it was in 1965.
And then you have these situations like, what's the Georgia former policeman, Rick Dyer, who bought the costume, filled it with possum guts and froze it and sold it to Tom Piscardi for a lot more than it was worth. And I think the media latches on to those, and that's considered the norm in the Bigfoot reporting community. There's no reason for us to take this seriously because that's what we're going to run into.
Well, Victor, Bigfootery, when I use the term,
which is a great term, by the way.
I'm talking about all things Bigfoot. I'm talking about Bigfoot community, blah, blah, blah. You've got to understand that the Bigfoot community is comprised of showmen, con men, hoaxers, fraud people looking for attention, and provocateurs, professional provocateurs, people that are paid to go into the party tent. You take a skunk and you send a skunk into the party tent, and the skunk lets loose its fumes.
It does what skunks do, right?
It does, and it backs out. Lets it dissipate a little bit, and then go back into the party and join the crowd. Boy, who was that skunk? Who did that? That's exactly what you got in Bigfootery. You got professional provocateurs that are assigned, and they're directed to do nothing but cause havoc and chaos.
Who do you think they're being directed by?
Money.
Money. Okay, fair enough.
Money. Anybody that doesn't want you to come close to Bigfoot. Anybody. People with enough money to make beautiful websites. And look, I've been in the business long enough to know that, and I'm talking about surveillance operations. I'm talking about covert, overt, reverse stings, and reverse stings. And I've worked undercover enough to know that if I wanted to get into an organization and know what's going on, what better way to do it than to set me up with a beautiful website, give me a lot of publicity, give me a lot of PR, make everybody come to me with their information, and there it is. I'm in.
You're one of the Bigfootery elite at that point.
Yes, you are. When I think back on that day, that July 19th day, 2014, very, very hot. Flies just tearing us apart. Mosquitoes and flies, bugs, and
those big black flies they have up there.
Yeah. But here's the deal, Victor. In hindsight, that should have been the first tell that I should have identified. I kicked myself. I was frustrated with myself for a whole lot of things on a whole set of levels, because I was a police officer. I'm looking up in the trees, I'm looking around, I'm being very cautious. I've participated in many search warrants, entry teams. I wasn't about to be ambushed by anybody and anything. I always carry I always had my weapon on me, my service weapon, although I had no intention of using it for any reason. I just wasn't going to be surprised. And quite frankly, when I started this quest, 2 years after I retired, it became apparent to me that, and when I had this experience, it became apparent to me that, this is real. My first reaction, and I'm going to tell you something right now. We've been talking for a few minutes, maybe an hour, I don't know.
About an hour.
But, yeah. And I don't believe that you've heard a profanity come out of my mouth.
Nor have you heard one come out of mine.
No, and I appreciate that. I have an aversion to that.
So do I.
I mean, I have, Victor. I don't want to sound like I'm like a Victorian prince here.
Of course.
I'm not, but I'm just human. But my first response to that thing out there in the woods that day was, what the F? You got to be kidding me.
Right.
Are you kidding me already?
You can't hold yourself responsible for what comes out of your mouth when you see something like that.
No, but what I did was I taunted it, and it stood there, no response. I thought maybe I could evoke a response, a smile, in the event that it was somebody in a ghillie suit or
a hoaxer of some kind.
Yeah, a fraud. I mean, it's just natural. But I started calling it a freak. I said, "You freak, you freak." Now it's very, very hot. It's one of those hot July, Michigan, humid days. We're just being eaten alive by bugs and flies. But
it is kind of maximum misery.
Yes, but it's important to say that because in many, many accounts, if you're aware of bears, if you've been around bears, they stink, and the flies and gnats fly around them. And that's why I say, I should have been more attentive to the tells. That should have told us something right there. Never mind the acorns flittering through the trees where there were no acorn trees. Never mind the cracks of thick branches. Never mind the feeling of ultimate dread, dark dread. It was just unnatural. All of a sudden, these bad feelings. Again, we talked about instinct. Your barometric barometer drops in your body. There's something wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And you're not listening to it. And so we come upon this huge fallen tree. I don't know if it fell on our way in there. I couldn't tell you this. I didn't hear any thud on the ground, but I did hear those cracks. And I know we were just inundated with these flies, biting flies and stuff. So we reach this point of this fallen tree. On the opposite side of the tree is a large, I would describe as a Bigfoot nest. It was just a bunch of bramble bushes with a deep, dark tunnel. And it was very long, maybe 8, 9, 10 foot long. My partner shimmied over the tree and was on his hands and knees none of us carried a flashlight. This is daytime. So he was on his hands and knees trying to look inside there to see if there was anything in it. While he's doing that, I'm looking around. I'm looking up in the trees. I'm looking around. I carried a camera. It was a cheap Kodak camera. I can tell you that right now. I don't even have it now.
Just a simple little Kodak film camera.
Yeah, I mean, think about it. Why do I need a camera? Because these things aren't for real. This
Correct.
is just for show, But I carried it with me. So I got those feelings, and so I turned around and looked back at my partner. I says, Bob, I says, I think it's time for us to go. This thing, Victor, is probably 9 feet tall, 8.5 to 9 feet tall. It's on the side of a tree. I don't know if it's coming down the tree or going up the tree, but there's another being with it that's got long, shaggy blonde hair, and I'll never forget this. And it was in a tree next to that tree. This one looked like you would expect Hollywood to portray as a wolf man. The long, shaggy hair. I mean, I've seen dogs with that long blonde hair before. I can't tell you what breed that is. But
The snout like a wolf?
Pardon me?
Well, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, I don't know that it had a snout. I remember the teeth.
Okay.
It had like canine teeth and red lips. I remember those red lips. And it was looking off into another direction, like it was uninterested in us down there on the ground. And I turned around and I told Bob, I says, Bob, I think it's time for us to leave. And when I did that, I turned around with the intention of snapping photos, and I did. I made a 180-degree arc, snap, snap, snap as I turned. And after that, I can tell you that I don't know where the time went. I don't know how long we spent there. It seemed like a long time, but I was stunned. I was absolutely stunned. I'll tell you what this is like. This is like, and I've been in a head-on car collision before, where everything went dark afterwards. But my feeling about that is that when you see your life flash before you, when you read about similar experiences, they'll tell you that your life seems to slow down. Everything seems to be in slow motion. And what I mean by that is that your mind, we're all very prescient. We're as human beings, we're very special. We really are. People should enjoy life and appreciate the life that we're given, because we really are special beings. And we're given this gift of our mind, and your mind is like a calculator. And when you're in situations like that, your mind seems to grow through thoughts in a split second, in the blink of the eye, quicker than you've ever experienced in your life. And that's the way it was for me. It was like that in 2003 in that head-on car collision. It was like that out there in 2014, where I'm thinking, I'm very lucid, and I feel myself under the influence of some powerful force that I can only describe as what I believe is infrasound. And in my mind, I'm thinking to myself, this is exactly how people are incapacitated, or animals are incapacitated. And that's dangerous. And I needed to leave there. And it was as though there were thoughts in my head, and I'm looking at this thing's staring at me. And I explained this to Janice Carter one time. And I said, Janice, I had this encounter, this sighting experience, and I felt as though somebody was standing over my shoulder, going through my computer files like an intruder. And she said, Val, she said, they were reading you. I says, what do you mean reading me? Yeah, they were looking to see what kind of person you were in your heart. And my feeling was then and now that when you hear people say, I looked in their eyes and I felt as though they were looking through my soul, believe that. Believe that. Believe it.
One of the things you develop working in an ICU or a trauma center, people lie to you every second of every day. Mm-hmm. And it must be exactly the same as a policeman. You just expect that what you're going to hear from the next person you run into is lies. And you get to where you're pretty good at sensing when you're being lied to. And it doesn't offend you after a while. It's just, okay, that's what ER patients do. Believe me, when you tell me this story, my ED trauma nurse sensors tell me he's telling me the truth. So you don't have to convince me that you're telling the truth. It seems like you had said that after being exposed to the whatever it was, infrasound supposedly, that you were somewhat sick, somewhat exhausted for a period of time after that.
I finally got Bob with me. Well, here's the deal. While I felt under the influence of that feeling, those thoughts, the only thing that released me, you want to hear this?
Absolutely.
The only thing I believe that released me from that feeling was the thought of free will. God gave us free will.
And that's what makes us human.
Immediately, that subsided. And I told Bob, I said, Bob, we're leaving. And Bob, couldn't hear me right away. And I said, Bob, if you're not going when I do, I'm gone. I'm leaving out of here. And I do not want to leave Bob out there by himself.
Of course not.
So we left. We got out of the woods, and we made it to the agricultural field. I think it was a soy field at the time. And it's before we made that transition from the woods to the soy field. There, I said, look at this, Bob. And there's the imprint. It's 17 and a half inches. It could be 18 inches, but what I measured was 17 and a half. It was in hard packed. Yes, it was in hard packed Michigan clay. And we took a picture of it. We measured it, and I got that in my group site. And I told Bob, I said, let's hurry up. In my mind, I envisioned this thing coming out of that woods on all fours. And I said, Bob, if that thing comes out of the woods, I'm going to have a heart attack right here. But otherwise, I said, I'm leaving. He gave me a ride to the hike site, and then he was going to give me a ride back to McDonald's where I had my vehicle parked. But
you wanted a cheeseburger.
Oh yeah. We said our goodbyes. He was on his way back to his house. I was going to be on my way back to mine, but suddenly I felt fatigued and tired. And the only thing that I could think about was a cheeseburger. Now at the time I wasn't a big cheese eater. I could probably count on one hand how many times I've had a cheeseburger in my life. But for unknown reasons, it had to be cheese. It was that milk product, that dairy product that I needed and I yearned for. And then I started thinking about this, and I started reading and researching. What is it in mama's milk that soothes and calms a baby, a newborn baby? It's a chemical.
Some amino acid or something.
Yes. And for the same effect. Well, I drove home in silence, finishing up that burger and those fries. I was completely exhausted, spent, wore out. I don't know. I'm still thinking about what I seen. It really bothered me what I seen because I'm trying to process it now. And by the time I get home, the first thing I do is pop out that memory card out of that camera, shove it in the computer, and I have to look for myself. I just cannot go to bed without confirming what it was that I seen. And there it was. And that's when I got posted on my group site. And I got back on the phone and called Bob at night. And I said, Bob, you're not going to believe this. What's going on, Val? I said, I'll send the photos to you. So what it did for me was it meant that it took about a little over a year, maybe before I got back in the woods. I wouldn't go back out there again. I told Bob, I'm not going back. I'm not going back out there again. Because to me, this thing was supposed to be a lie. That's what we were told. I mean, I read it in the grocery store fish wrap paper, right there at the checkout counters. I've seen it all the time. It's a lie. It was a joke. But yet, there it was. people say, well, it could have been somebody with a ghillie suit. There's nobody at 9 foot tall running around with a ghillie suit, 90-degree weather with humidity. Well, they were in a ghillie suit. They were hunting. There's no hunting season in July in Michigan.
And nobody hangs from a tree 13 feet up.
No. So I got a gentleman. He was a member of the group site. I don't know that he's still there. He was from the UK. He looked at the photo, and a few days later, he sends it back to me. He said, Val, do you realize there were more beings around you than you claim there were? And I said, no. And then he takes his red marker out, and he circles all these different things. They're on the ground. There's probably 5 or 6 of them on the ground, all around us. I didn't see, but they were laying down. The feeling that I felt was so strong. You remember the feeling of Est walking in the auditorium, and when I shared with you the feelings that I felt, the similar feelings I felt walking into some of these homes where nothing was there, but yet I felt a presence there. Exactly the same thing. Exactly.
Well,
no difference.
I agree with that. But what I wanted to say was that, first off, I think it's a brilliant comparison you're making. And it was that presence and reality of free will that got you through the EST meetings, as well as got you out of that forest right at that time. And I don't know if it was as big an impact on you as the EST meetings, but I genuinely felt like if I stayed there any longer.
You're talking about the EST meetings.
Yes, the EST meetings. I genuinely felt that if I stayed there any longer, that I would be damaged in an irreparable manner.
And when I first heard that, I says, I got to tell you, I thought I said, I got to tell you something about that. When I took Jean home that night with my wife, we came home from that meeting. I don't know what time it was, but I told her and I told my wife, and if my wife was here right now, she'd tell you the same thing.
Oh, I believe you.
I told her that there's something about it that I don't like. And when I did, a wind stirred up and some chimes ringed, and I heard a wolf. We all heard a wolf howl or something.
Wow.
Howl. And you talk about chills and stuff.
Right.
Victor, I'm telling you, if you looked at me eye to eye right now, you see my big brown eyes.
I know.
Looking at you just as clear as day when I tell you this. I heard, and we all heard, what sounded like a wolf howl or something. So in my mind, I'm with you there. I felt the same thing. I felt the same thing. And no, I didn't go back. I don't believe I went back after that.
I'm going to try to switch gears here a little bit. The background that you have is more fascinating than any Bigfootery participant. That's pretty good. That I've talked to. What first brought you to my attention was the site that you have on Facebook. Mm-hmm. You know, my first thing that I posted on the site was this picture of this Neanderthal-looking 7 foot 8 inch tall thing, and one of my friends in the woods that are adjacent to his house. And immediately, I mean, I can guarantee you there's nothing altered in that picture. It's just, here's what it was. Straightened it out, played with the curves a little bit. That's all. I was attacked a lot of different ways. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. and I'm assuming that that's pretty much the norm. That's the behavior that you must have run into.
I did. In fact, that's one of the things, that's one of the learning curves that I try to share with people that step out and talk about it, is that you're going to have to understand that this is part of stepping out. people are going to be critical. They're going to criticize, and some of it's going to sting, like bee stings. I've had people attack me about, what I see as a tree stump. Well, no, it wasn't a tree stump. First of all, I don't recall you being there with me, standing next to me. Standing with me with my eyes, seeing and feeling what I felt from my heart. No, that's not happened. That's not happened. And plus, I'm not going to allow you to project your mirror image on me like that. You're not allowed to do that. I won't accept you to do that. You can't do that. You don't have my permission to do that. You can do, but I'm just going to tell you right now, unless and until you stand there with me and experience what I see, unless you can tell me what's in my heart and what's in my eyes, then you've got a right to say that. But until then, you don't have the right to do that, because I won't allow it. That's just the way it is.
Well, you've got a very, which I agree with, a very strict and clear set of behavioral rules for your Facebook group. I mean, you don't want ridicule. You don't want calling everything fake. You essentially want people to be pleasant to each other and to talk about the photos. Is that correct? I mean, that's pretty much your goal, is to have people exchange information.
Well, here's the deal. I got into Facebook. Remember, when I got into Facebook, I came in kicking and screaming because I really, really, really didn't want to get involved in social media. But it was the only way. And by the way, I just sent those photos to you.
Yep, I see them just popped up.
And, I didn't want to get into social media, number one. Number two, it was the only way that I could network with other people that experienced what I did. And that, to me, that's what was most important. And listen, I spent 25 and a half years fighting and arguing with people. I really don't want to fight with people.
You really don't want to do that anymore?
No, I don't want to do that. I don't want to babysit grown-ups.
Correct. And that's your right, and that should be enforced fully, and people should respect it.
I hope they do. David Height came to me and asked me to admin his group. Well, the only thing I could do was tell him, this is what works for me. This is what I won't tolerate on my group site. And you see now today he's 30,000 people. It's a big group site, and it's pretty successful.
Yes, it is.
I'm not going to take credit for that. I can just tell you what you can see what I've done, and that's the way I carry myself. Somebody said, "Val, were you in the military?" I says, "Well, yeah, I have." I said, "I did."
Yeah, I was there.
I did 2 tours, and I'm pretty much that way. I like order, and I don't like dysfunction. I got to have things organized, Victor. It's very, very important to me. And if you don't have control, then you have no organization. And it's to me, it's vitally important. It really is. It's very, very important. And I hope people appreciate that. I don't,
Well, I think most do. I think you're going to run into a few people who are kind of addicted to that internet snark. Then there's plenty of places they can go to find that.
Yeah. Go to the bar, go in the bathroom, get your top marker out right away.
I'm looking at this footprint that you sent me. All right, I've hiked not the entire Appalachian Trail, but about 80% of it, and a good portion of the Pacific Crest Trail, and lots of other trails across the country, Chillicoot Trail, and if I just ran into that footprint, I probably would have just said, "Time to turn around."
Yeah. Pretty big.
It's big beyond what you can think of as a living animal.
Mm-hmm. And to think that that's in dry soil.
Yeah,
it's clay. So if it was in moist soil, yeah, it would be a good opportunity to take a cast. But there's no point in trying to expend time on something that's on the surface like that. I wouldn't do it.
Do you know anybody who? Okay, the newer iPhones, iPhone 12s, iPhone 13s, and I think even some of the new Samsung models, have LiDAR. And it's not the world's most sophisticated LiDAR, but I would think it would be enough to take a bunch of measurements through lasers of something like that and to sort of recreate that in 3 dimensions. Have you seen anybody do that?
Well, I've seen people talk about it. Maybe I should go on YouTube and see if anybody's done it. I didn't have an i13 phone in 2014.
No, of course not. No.
I didn't have that with me, and
nobody
did.
Tell
you something. No, and I'm going to tell you something. In that moment in time, July 19th, 2014, I'm looking at the footprint as we speak, revisiting the memories. I didn't want to stay around there.
No, of course not.
Anything that took time. I mean, I'm telling you, Victor, I didn't want to see that thing come out of that woods.
No, I wouldn't either.
As a chess player, as a student chess player, and a student of Sun Tzu, the Art of War, I have to give the individual on the tree that I sent you a picture of a lot of credit. And I'm going to tell you why. Because in my learning, in my understanding in life, and just my experiences, one of the worst things that you can do to somebody, anybody, your opponent, your enemy, is to back them in the corner. A cornered enemy and a cornered opponent is a dangerous opponent.
An extremely dangerous opponent.
Extremely. So, to me, I respect the fact, and there's no doubt in my mind, you've seen that picture?
Oh, yeah.
As well as I did. There's no doubt in my mind that they've seen that weapon on the side of my belt. No doubt. But I had no intention, no idea. It's not in my heart to hurt anybody or anything. I don't even hunt anymore, Victor. But the fact that so many of those things were on the ground all around me, and I was able to walk out of there unmolested, unharmed, said a lot to me about them.
Well, it indicates that they were not just hardwired to harm you.
No. But the message was clear. I had no business there. I wasn't wanted there, and I needed to leave. And by golly, I did exactly that.
The very best interviews come from those conversations that grow organically and go in directions that you might not ever anticipate. You learn things about people. You learn things about the depth of their experience. Every time that Val posts a photo on the Bigfoot Photo Archive Facebook group, he almost always uses the same caption, very simply. What do you see? What do you know? Let's repeat that. What do you see? What do you know? And with Bigfoot photos, frequently all you can describe is what you see. I see a thing that looks humanoid. It looks like a huge Neanderthal. If I measure it correctly from the photograph, it's 7 feet 8 inches tall. It seems to be wearing deer skins. It seems to be incredibly massive and muscular. What do I know? Very, very little, other than a camera caught those photons at a particular point in time. Now, to get to learn more, I have to study. I have to research. I have to try to recreate what was captured by that camera. I have to go back and try to gain further evidence. I want to tell Val how greatly I appreciate the time that he spent with me. I'm fully aware that we've only covered a small portion of this area of discipline and this area of study. And I very, very much hope that in the near future, we're able to sit down and talk again, and to go through all the fascinating stories and experiences that I know Val has. Thank you very much, sir. I'll talk to you soon.
Excellent. It is now my time to shine. Trailer Trash Terrors is written and produced by Vic Hermanson, with substantial assistance from yours truly. All media clips are used under the protection of the Fair Use Doctrine. The music you heard was provided by Lobo Loco and Smart Sound. Please contact us with your thoughts concerning the Trailer Trash Terrors podcast, positive or negative, at trailertrashterrors@gmail.com.
Okay, Victor, this is my voice recording for you. What do you see? What do you know?